So for the next few moments, I'd like to hold your attention to the subject, the struggle is real. The struggle is real. Being a man of a certain age, one of my favorite songs is by a brother named Marvin Gaye. And this song dropped back in 1971. The name of the song is What's Going On? I see your congregation knows more than holy, 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 and come thou fount of every blessing. But I can imagine the smiles on some of the faces as you reminisce about the music that played and the words that he sang, and how life was so much simpler back in what my 15-year-old daughter calls the 1900s. Afros, bell-bottom jeans, polyester shirts with the lapels to the shoulders were the thing back and then, and for some, they are still the thing. Don't need to stop. At that time, we were still getting used to, and in some cases still fighting for equal rights, as it had been only 6 years since the Civil Rights Act of 1965 had been signed by President Lyndon Johnson. Over the years, we watched as it helped America become more diversified. Some of us may have benefited from jobs and schools opening up and offering opportunities that had been closed or off limits for years. But contrary to popular belief, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, afforded by this act was not only about race and ethnicity. DEI has a broad swath that affects many areas such as racial and ethnic minorities, age discrimination, women's rights, sexual orientation, people with physical and mental disabilities, religious minorities, hiring and promotion policies aimed at creating fair workplaces with greater diversity and leadership roles, school recruitment strategies, financial aid distribution, and campus climate. Representation on TV, film, and publishing is shaped to reflect broader demographics. DEI often intersects with anti-discrimination laws and affirmative action policies. DEI affects nearly everyone in some way, shape, or form in the workplace, schools, government policies, and social norms. Its influences reaches both those it aims to uplift and those who interact with the evolving frameworks of equity and inclusion. But preacher, what does this have to do with the text or the anniversary of my pastor? I'm glad you asked that. In recent days, we have witnessed the unraveling of many hard-fought victories. The demise of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives signals a regression in the fight for justice and representation. The dismantling of the Civil Rights Act of 1965 is not just a legal shift, it's a spiritual battle. A reminder that the struggle for righteousness is ongoing. These changes press upon us, reminding us that the forces of injustice are always at work, seeking to roll back progress and silence the voices of the faithful. Brothers and sisters, we gather today not just to celebrate an anniversary of pastor and people, but to acknowledge a journey. A journey marked by joy, certainly, but also by trials, tribulations, and the ever-present reality that the struggle is real. As we honor your pastor and my friend and brother's dedicated service, we do so in a world grappling with complexities that echo the very struggles faced by the early church in Corinth. As Paul so eloquently articulates in 2 Corinthians 4, verses 8 through 10, to understand the weight of these verses, we must acknowledge the context in which they were written. The early church was a fledgling community facing persecution from both within and without. They were hard-pressed on every side, struggling to define their identity, facing internal disputes, and experiencing the hostility of the Roman Empire. Yet, amidst this turmoil, Paul offers words of profound hope, a testament of the enduring power of God in the face of adversity. Paul's second letter to the Corinthians was written in a time of great personal struggle, deep theological reflection, and ongoing conflict within the early Christian community. To fully understand what led him to write 2 Corinthians chapter 4, we must consider several key historical and spiritual factors that shaped this message. After writing 1 Corinthians, Paul made what he calls a painful visit to Corinth, where he was openly challenged and humiliated by someone in the church, likely under the influence of false apostles who questioned his authority and the things which he had established in the Corinthian church. His authority was challenged because some of them knew that Paul had a past. And isn't it funny how some people will find out things about you or just know who you used to be, and they want to continually hold it over your head. But instead of Paul arguing with them, he vigorously defended his apostleship, emphasizing that he was called by Christ himself and that his authority came from God and not from human approval. Another challenge that he faced was the gospel of grace over legalism. False teachers came after him and were pushing a works-based gospel with Jewish laws and traditions as requirements for salvation, rather than salvation by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. He emphasized that true righteousness comes from God, not human effort. He reminded them that he preached with honesty and integrity, unlike those who distorted God's word for personal gain. Paul established the Corinthian church in the power of the Holy Spirit, not in persuasive human arguments. Paul made it clear that we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord. He was adamant that his authority came from God, not human ability. Paul modeled servant leadership, working with his own hands to avoid being a financial burden. His opponents, in contrast, were likely exploiting the Corinthians for personal gain. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 7 to 10, Paul emphasizes that true servants of Christ are often weak in the world's eyes, but strong in God's power. While Paul's gospel-centered leadership was being challenged by those who sought to divide the church for personal influence and gain, Paul affirmed that he continued his ministry with integrity despite these attacks. Many in Corinth, influenced by Greek thought, associated divine favor with success, wealth, and pain-free life. Some were teaching that true faith should lead to victory without suffering, a prosperity gospel, if you would call it. Paul countered this by teaching that suffering is part of the Christian journey, as some of you may know well this morning. In 2 Corinthians 4, 8 through 10, he outlined that although believers suffer, they are not defeated. Their struggle reveals the power of Christ. Now, fast forward to our own time. We stand in a moment of significant societal shift, a moment where the very foundations of progress painstakingly laid over decades seem to be under threat. The gains of the civil rights movement, a beacon of hope and a testament of the power of collective action, are being eroded. Voting rights, hard won through struggle and sacrifice, are being systemically undermined. The dream of a truly equitable society where race and background do not determine destiny feels increasingly distant. Furthermore, we are witnessing the dismantling of DEI initiatives across institutions. What was once seen as a necessary step towards rectifying historical injustices and creating a more inclusive society is now being portrayed as divisive and unnecessary. The very language of equity is being weaponized, twisted to suggest that efforts to level the playing field are somehow discriminatory against the historically privileged. This narrative, while demonstrably false, resonates with a segment of society, further exacerbating the divisions that plague us. The rollback of progress is not merely a political issue, it is a spiritual one. It challenges our fundamental understanding of justice, compassion, and the inherent dignity of every human being. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that the struggle for equity, the fight against prejudice and discrimination, is not a battle won once and for all, but a continuous, ongoing struggle. This struggle is for real. And it is in this context, in this climate of uncertainty and regression, that the words of 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 10 resonate with a particular power. They remind us that the struggle we face both individually and collectively are not insurmountable. They remind us that even when we are hard pressed on every side, we are not crushed. Even when we are persecuted, we are not forsaken. Even when we are struck down, we are not destroyed. This is the message of hope that we celebrate today, a message that has and will sustain your pastor and this community through the years. It is a message that we desperately need to hear today as we navigate the challenges of our time. I know it took me a long time to get here, but I promise I'm going to hit these 3 points and raise up out of here and let you get home so you can get ready for the big game. Point 1, we are persecuted, but not perishing. Paul's word resonates with the struggle of every believer. We know what it means to be pressed by trials, by our systems, and by opposition. The weight of life's injustices, the exhaustion of laboring for righteousness, and the pain of witnessing regression can feel overwhelming at times. Yet Paul reminds us that we are not crushed. The same God who sustained our ancestors through the chains of oppression, the fire hoses of injustice, and the cross of Calvary is still sustaining us today. We may feel the weight of change, but we will not be wiped out. This struggle is for real, y'all. Life as we know and have seen it throws many punches, mostly when we are not ready or paying attention. It brings pressures from all directions. Financial burdens have the ability and the tendency to weigh us down. Health issues sap our strength and the strength of those around us. Relationship problems strain our hearts and our minds. The weight of responsibility, the expectations of others, the sheer complexity of life can feel overwhelming. We are indeed hard pressed on every side. Think of the pressures faced by our ancestors. They faced the horrors of slavery, the indignities of segregation, the constant threat of violence. They were hard-pressed indeed. Think of the pressures faced by those who fought for civil rights, who marched, who protested, who risked their lives for equality. They were ostracized, attacked, and some even killed. They were hard-pressed. They knew that the struggle back then was for real. And what about the pressures faced by your pastor? The weight of leading a congregation, the responsibility of providing spiritual guidance, the challenges of navigating complex interpersonal dynamics. These are pressures that only those in ministry can truly understand. The constant demands and emotional toil, the struggle to balance personal life with the needs of the church and the community. It's a heavy burden to bear. Your pastor, like all of us, has been hard pressed. And I'm sure that he knows that the struggle is real. But the good news, the transformative truth, is that even in the midst of these pressures, we are not crushed. Why? Because our strength does not come from ourselves. It comes from God. It is His grace that sustains us, His love that upholds us, His power that empowers us. The weight may be heavy, but we won't be wiped out because we are carried by a power that's greater than ourselves. Point number 2, we are persecuted but not paralyzed. Paul understood persecution, not just verbal attacks, but physical suffering. Yet he declares that through the word, that though the word may turn against him, God never fails. God will never give up on us. And this today is our confidence. Church, there will always be those who seek to silence the truth, who seek to silence your voice. There are those who will, there are forces seen and unseen that will work against the advancement of God's kingdom. But what they cannot take from us is the presence of God. Persecution does not paralyze us because we are never alone. No, never alone. God promised that he would be there with us no matter how bad the situation may get. He promised that he'll never leave us. No, never leave us alone. Persecution takes on many forms. It can be overt, like physical violence or legal discrimination, but it can also be subtle, like whispers behind our backs, being excluded from opportunities, having our voices silenced. It can be the sting of prejudice, the pain of being judged based on the color of our skin, our gender, our sexual orientation, our beliefs, or our disabilities. It can be the isolation of being misunderstood or the loneliness of standing for what is right in the face of opposition. The early Christians knew what it meant to be persecuted. They were harassed, imprisoned, and even martyred for their faith. Those who fought for civil rights were also persecuted. They were spat upon, beaten, and even killed for daring to challenge the status quo. Even today, those who speak out against injustice, those who advocate for the marginalized, those who dare to challenge the powerful, they often fear persecution. And yes, even your pastor has faced persecution in various forms. Criticism, misunderstandings, even outright hostility that can be part of a pastoral journey. The weight of leadership, the pressure to conform, the challenges of staying true to one's conviction in the face of opposition can feel like forms of persecution. But again, the promise rings true. We are persecuted, but not forsaken. People may turn against us, but God never will. Human relationships may fail us, but God's love is unwavering. Our struggles don't stop us because his presence sustains us. His hand is upon us, guiding us, strengthening us, and reminding us that we are never alone. When we see policies reversed, when we feel the sting of discrimination, when we watch history attempt to rewrite itself in favor of the oppressor, we do not grow weary. We do not stop because God is with us. He was with Moses before Pharaoh. He was with Daniel in the lion's den. He was with Paul in the prison cell, and he is still with us today. The reason this church still stands, the reason your pastor still serves, the reason we keep moving forward is because we are sustained by a presence greater than the pressures we face. Point 3, we are pounded, but we are not powerless. Life has a way of knocking us around and at times knocking us down. We face setbacks, setups, disappointments, and failures. We experience loss, grief, and pain. We make mistakes, we stumble, and at times we fall. Sometimes we feel like we are being pounded by the waves of adversity, like we are being overwhelmed by the storms of life. Paul says that we carry in our bodies the death of Jesus so that his life may also be revealed in us. The enemy can strike, but he cannot stop the resurrection power of Jesus Christ. The same power that raised Jesus from the grave is the power that will lift you up whenever you're knocked down. That's the same power that will be with us when people turn you around. That's the same power that will be with us when they tell you you ain't no good. That's the same power that will be with us when they say, no, that's not for you. That's the same power when they hire somebody that's not as qualified as you. And yes, that is something that we have experienced. And let me let you know one thing. That is something that I don't care if DEI is still around or not. You will experience that in your life. There will be people that are less qualified than you, that people will choose, that humans will choose above you. But let me let you know one thing, that God has the last decision.
Yes, sir.
When people tell you no, God says yes. When people close the door, God will open it and make sure nobody closes it until you're already going through. God is and God can. Think of the countless individuals throughout history who have been struck down by illnesses, by poverty, and by injustice. Think of the struggles faced by families who have lost loved ones, who have been displaced by war, who have been victims of violence. Think of the personal battles we all face, the moments when we feel broken, defeated, and powerless. And yes, even your pastor has experienced moments of being struck down. Doubt, discouragement, and the weight of ministry can sometimes feel like a crushing blow. The challenges of leading a congregation, the pain of seeing people suffer, the struggle of maintaining hope in the face of adversity can take its toll on a person. But the final word is not despair. The final word is not defeat. The final word is hope. We are struck down but not destroyed, because even in our weakness, even his strength carries us. Even in our brokenness, his grace heals us. Even in our darkest moments, his light shines through us. Life may knock us down, but it won't knock us out, because we are held in the palm of his hand. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 4 to remind the church and himself that ministry is costly. Suffering is real, but God's power is greater than any trial we may come against. His experiences with rejection, persecution, and affliction did not destroy him. They strengthened his dependence on Christ, and they will do the same thing for you. His message still speaks to us today. We may be persecuted, pressured, and pounded, but we are not perishing, paralyzed, or powerless. Like Paul, we endure because God's sustaining power carries us through struggle. Brothers and sisters, the struggle is real. We live in a world that is broken, a world that is hurting, a world that desperately needs the healing power of God's love. As we celebrate your pastor's anniversary, we acknowledge that struggles have been faced, the challenges that we have overcome, and the unwavering faith that has and will sustain him and this community for years. The struggle is real. And the message of 2 Corinthians 4, 8 through 10 is not just a message for the early church. It is a message for us today. It is a message of hope in the face of adversity. A reminder that even when we are pressured, persecuted, and pounded, we are not perishing, paralyzed, or powerless, because God is with us. His power is within us, and his love, people will be able to see that through us. The struggle is real, so continue to press on, to stand firm in your faith, to work for justice, and to love one another as Christ loved us. Continue to support your pastor. Lift him up in prayer and walk alongside him as he leads you on this journey of faith. And never forget that even in the midst of the struggle, the victory is already yours. Now unto him who is able to keep us from falling and present us before a faultless God. Now unto him who is able to get you through that struggle. The struggle is real, folks. But now unto the one who can lift you up out of the muck and the mire. Now unto him who will be with you when others turn their backs on you. The struggle is real, y'all. But now unto him who is able to do it when other folks can't. Now unto him when peace like a river attendeth my way. When sorrows and sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. No matter how bad it may seem, one thing that you can remember, it is well with my soul. I don't know what your struggle is. And you might not be willing to share it with me. But just remember this. It is well. It is well with my soul. I trust in God wherever I may be. On a mountain bleak, on a storm-tossed sea. Come what may, from day to day. My Heavenly Father watches over me. I'm about to take my seat, but I got 3 questions that I want to ask you. Won't he make a way for you? Won't he open doors for you? Won't he provide for you? Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah. Say yeah.